So we are coming to the end of day one. We have our last session, which is a panel discussion. We've got some great panelists on this, and it is going to be a discussion about revolutionizing urban mobility. So the Giga developers, our vision for the future. We've got an opportunity as well for Q&A here, so please do raise your hand if you have a question, and the mic will be brought to you. So I want to ask the moderator to come up, and also the panelists as well. So we have our moderator from Roland Berger, Arvind, CJ, he's a partner at Roland Berger. Arvind, if you'd like to come up. We also have our panelists, Badr Hanbazaza, he's a senior director for community relations at Roshan Group, Andrea Foro, Group Head of Mobility at Red Sea Global, Albert Naim, Executive Director of Master Planning at Diriyah Company, and definitely, last but not least, Mohammed Al Musawa, he's the Head of E-Mobility at ASX E-Mobility Al Sharif Group Holdings. So let's give them a nice big warm welcome.
In terms of today's panel, right? So in terms of urban mobility revolutionizing, so we have quite a few members from the KSA ecosystem looking into the different Giga projects, from the private sector as well in terms of the infrastructure and so on. So I'm hoping for a very nice and open discussion in terms of the different topics. And of course, what we discuss in terms of, let's say, the future definitely has an impact on all of the suppliers and, let's say, the part manufacturers who are located over here. So I do hope it's going to be an interesting conversation. Now, quickly jumping into the topic. So to start with, in terms of, let's say, the key challenges which we see within the existing cities or overall with respect to urban mobility, what are the key challenges which we see today? And if you can give us an overview, again, just getting into this venue through the Riyadh traffic was already a bit of a challenge. So just trying to understand what are the key challenges which we are facing today, and what we need to address. Maybe the first question, given that Albert, you're sitting right at the end, it goes to you first. And
Okay. Is that okay? Can everybody hear? Okay. So thank you, Arvind, and appreciate that I'm the first one to start speaking. As you can see, I'm focused on master planning, not necessarily on traffic or mobility as such. So we were talking earlier, just before the panel as well, from master planning side and from the Giga projects and the whole investment of Saudi in infrastructure and metro and public transportation, it's all about reducing the number of cars on the street. So the biggest challenge to achieve this is to change the trends and habits of people. They're so car oriented. So how can you promote and give them incentive to use something else? And from our side in Diriyah and the project we're doing, and generally in a best practice, one of the first things we have to do is to look at the land use mix. So make it more user friendly, more accessible without depending on car. The other thing that we always look at is to try and provide a convenient alternative. So how can we give the user a different alternative than just a car? If we look at the public transportation, Vision 2030 of the Kingdom, and increasing the life expectancy for people, and promote walkability and active mobility and a lot of that stuff. So you need to give them a convenient option, different than car, make it more appealing, give them an incentive to use it, whether on the tourism, in the business sector, in the office spaces that you give your employees access to these public transportation for free, etc. And the last thing is to try and make the usage of car less appealing, whether by parking fees that is slightly more expensive, or the tolls in the street, which is a mean of reducing traffic congestion. So generally, if you can do all of that, and that's the current challenge, is to change the people behavior and let them use cars less and give them at the same time a different alternative. I think both are challenges, people's behavior and providing the appropriate mean alternative.
perfect. Thanks, Albert. Maybe the same question, Andreas, towards you. Given that, again, with Diriyah, it's more of, let's say, an existing or a well-established, let's say, area which we have. But from, let's say, a greenfield, new development perspective, what are your views around it?
Thank you, Arvin. Oh, I'm very loud. One of the things I did at the very, very start was to try and understand what the end goal was. What did we want to achieve? Of course, you want to move guests, you want to move staff to and from airports, hotels, living accommodation, but also do that sustainably, do it commercially, um, without having to order hundreds and hundreds of vehicles. So we looked at this in two ways. First of all, of course, sustainability. So everything we have on land is green, powered by our Automechanika. Is that's much better? Okay, all right. So the first thing we did was look at this on a sustainability level. How do we make this fully sustainable? Electric vehicles are abundant. Electric vehicles that are powered by green energy, solar, wind, are rare. So we have that advantage by creating our own solar farm, 760,000 panels, one of the world's largest, if not the largest, battery storage capacity. So that was the first stage. But we're moving thousands and thousands of people a day. Shura Island next year, for example, will have 2,500 hotel rooms and a population of staff of approximately 7,000, which need to go to and from work every single day. Plus, of course, our guests coming in and out of the destination. Um, so being able to power sustainably is absolutely key for us, but also then looking on how we can reduce the cost, reduce the number of vehicles. Larger vehicles allow more people, potentially looking at car share services and facilities that allow us to do that. But we have very different challenges rather than, than Duria has. And I think Duria, you're looking at this as a more walkable district. Um, you know, we have the same on Shura. So micromobility plays a big part of what we're doing. Bikes and e-bikes, shared buggy services. But like anywhere else, getting from an airport to a destination, we need that transportation.
Thanks, Andres. In terms of maybe to bother on your side regarding the erosion related development, I mean, like Andreas already described how they had to, let's say, plan for specific, let's say, use cases with respect to the people movement and so on. From erosion perspective, how did you, let's say, plan for the different mixes of mobility cases, and what was, let's say, the final plan which you have, or let's say you are trying to implement within the development?
So planning comes always from the beginning of the master planning stage and the planning stage. When you put the plan and the proper right ready infrastructure for your neighborhoods or your communities to be ready, to be more sustainable and accepting more smart mobility solutions, such as the smart mobilities or the electrical vehicles or the easy mobility like the bikes and this stuff. Plus, when you make less narrower roads within the neighborhoods, the people will think of using scooters and bikes, smaller vehicles than using bigger vehicles. So that brings again into the sustainability of the life cycle of the project itself and the life cycle of the infrastructure.
Understood. And Mohammed, to you again, with being the only person from the private sector, I believe. So, in terms of the solutions which you are exploring, or from a private sector perspective, in terms of addressing the requirements of all of, let's say, the Giga projects, the future of mobility. So, what are the key initiatives which are being implemented from the private sector side?
So yes, I'm from the private sectors, the ones that are always hungry for money, and we quite touch point with everyone from the private sector, from the public sectors, policymakers, etc. So on my side, we would provide I mean, generally we would provide whatever they want. I mean, if they're paying money, we would give them the solutions. But today we are providing all the whole mobility, e-mobility solutions in terms of sustainable solutions, electric vehicle chargings. Today we're getting into the hydrogen, we're getting into the hybrid, etc., etc. So the private sector is really interested in the sustainable solutions of mobility, and we are committed to invest on that transformation. I mean, the gentlemen here are from PI fund companies, so they have their own investment, but really we want to be part of that in other municipalities, other cities inside Saudi, the capitals, etc. So we are quite committed in sustainable solutions, electric vehicle charging infrastructures. This is something that we want to do. Building a large wide network of chargers across Saudi, this is one thing we can do. But again, really, we want to be in close communication with all the other parties because eventually, if you look around you, I mean, everyone is committed to building the charging network, everyone is committed to building or having these sustainable solutions, etc., etc. But really, I think I came to the realization that we need to be part of the discussion with all the stakeholders to eventually build something that is perfect to the end user. Because one of the experiences I had is that I was working on a project that is sustainable solution in the mobility, and eventually, if you take a step back and look at the project and look at the other companies, the other competitors, or the other public sectors entities, let's say, at a point I found that we are all working on the same area. And if you take a step back and look from the consumer's perspective, it won't serve the end customer. So what we really want and need is that we engage with all the stakeholders and really build more of a sustainable solutions, of which we can of which we are committed to do as a private sector, and we really want to do it.
Thank you, Mohammed. So I think for you, it's more of stakeholder engagement and making sure that you're able to bring in the solutions with the consumers require, right? So I think it's a fair point. And specifically on the EV charging infrastructure, I do have seen so many, let's say, private sector players investing into that, bringing the technology into the kingdom. And of course, there have been a lot of developments with respect to the regulations and so on, which is now allowing, let's say, the charging infrastructure build up in the kingdom. But then again, there's still quite some path which needs to be crossed before we can say yes.
Not, if it wasn't overly expensive or significantly expensive. Now, manufacturers in Europe and the US are bringing down pricing. The cost of ownership is reducing slightly. But there is also the back end of this. If your EV charging infrastructure is not geared or not ready, then, as I said to you the other day, I've had a car, borrowed it for a while, had to stop at a cafe in Riyadh Park, plug in, go and have a coffee, do an hour, 2 hours worth of work, wait for the car to charge, and then leave. So that's something that government legislation, regulation, and pricing that need to meet all of these demands. Otherwise, it keeps rolling, and it doesn't really gain a lot of traction.
No, absolutely. I think one more factor which would help people shift towards EV is if it can drive on the desert dunes and so on, right? So that definitely is one factor which we need to account for in the region as well. But fair point. So in terms of, again, maybe Albert, going back to you, I think we were just before the panel started, we were discussing about the challenges related to, let's say, having existing infrastructure around you in terms of, let's say, the different exits, entry points, and so on, and also that you have more of a historical or let's say an already developed area, right? So from a master planning perspective, again, so what is that you, let's say, gravitate towards to be able to address the urban mobility related?
Okay, maybe I'll try and answer this, but before that, just to add to what Mohammed was saying, in Raya, and I think that's a general across all of PIF as well, there's a very strong agenda towards the EV direction. And in Raya, all development, we have 4 big master plans. There's a very strong sustainability agenda as well. So Drag 8.1 is accredited already at a community level as LEED Platinum. And I believe we were one of the first projects, and definitely Giga project, that partnered with MOMRA and Ministry of Housing for the Mostadam accreditation for sustainability, which is a local-based system here in the kingdom. So there's a very proper agenda towards increasing the number of EV charging points. I think even with LEED, and please, I'm not 100% sure of the numbers, 3% or 5%, we're going way beyond this. Whether in the commercial uses, retail and F&B, so it's that fast, rapid chargers, or even in the domestic at the house level where it's overnight can be charged. So you'll have plenty of opportunities in our Giga project. I think to address what you were asking, Arvind, our biggest, I don't want to say challenge, but one of our biggest factors that we have to always be considerate of is that we are at the perimeter of Riyadh, which is an existing city. There's an existing fabric. There's an existing utilities. There is a significant infrastructure investment in the public transportation like the metro and so on. So we have to plug into these systems. But at the same time, although we are looking at the history and culture, and we have a UNESCO World Heritage Site listed and so on, there's a very strong agenda looking at the future as well. So the smart cities component is, again, I believe we looked at it very carefully in our developments and master plans. A lot of it is maybe at the asset management level, if we call it a digital twin or whatever, it's a predictive maintenance, but it's similar in mobility. And I think a lot of people touch base on it. You kind of analyze the patterns and understand the people and where they want to go. And I started by saying a mixed land use that is live, work, and play. So it's reducing the number of congestion and cars on the road, but it's also getting a lot of tourists, understanding where they want to be, where they enjoy the time more. Even last mile and how you can have a shaded walkway for the pedestrians or the cyclists. We have the sports boulevard going into our site. And generally traffic and even manipulating the car park and directing people to the right vacant spaces, it's a dynamic system. It's a live city. So smart cities can help us in predicting these behavior trends. Some other discussion was about the AI as well and how we can add this into the equation. So I think from our side, we invested heavily in the technology and the smart city system that can enable a better mobility strategy across the whole development and portfolio.
I'll try to use mine. I wanted to ask you a question. So you have a you're not in the green and you're doing a lot of work.
Andreas?
It's not. Let's try this one. I was going to ask the questions around a greenfield site, and we understand the challenges of a greenfield site, but I'm sure for someone like you, this is the easy bit. You know, master planning from the start, have 28,000 square kilometers of land, and can play. Genuinely can create wonders. For you, with an existing area on the outskirts of Riyadh, with everything you've said, I mean, what are some of the challenges? You talked about EV charging. How do you power your chargers? Is it off the grid? Is it solar?
Well, I always compare us with Red Sea and Neom. Every one of us have their own challenges. So in Diraya, from one side, our challenge is being at the existing fabric and the existing networks, etc., with the traffic, with utilities, etc., which is a challenge, but at the same time, there's a good side of it. We have it there. We have legislations, we have authorities to engage with, and so on. With the Red Sea, yes, you have a green field, you can do whatever you want, but in absence of legislations, it is tough. It's not easy. So every one of us have their own challenges. I think generally for power provision, we're building two major bulk stations to feed our developments. It's significant. Um, for example, in safety and security, we had to engage with the Sadaya to get more intel and plug into something that exists, with the challenges that comes being in the tourism agenda and a very heavy concentration of heavyweight champions assets, a lot of museums, a lot of hotels, a lot of significant VIPs and royals to be present in our development and so on. So there's a very strong safety and security agenda, and how do we control traffic and divert them in certain cases, and so on and so forth. So yeah, generally being in between all of this, it's a very heavy stakeholder management that needs to be played in our development. I've been involved for 5 years, so I've seen a lot of it. It's not an easy ride, but so far successful.
Good. Albert, given that you touched upon AI-related things and so on, right? Now, in terms of future of mobility as well, eVTOLs is something which everyone talks about. There are a few investments which have happened. And again, I will direct this question towards the Greenfield project over here. Andreas, if you could comment on that particular part. How do we see this developing in the kingdom?
eVTOL specifically? So it will develop and it will grow. I believe it will take some time, and we've seen, Neon with their investments and other companies all around the world investing billions into eVTOL, and then that spawns urban air mobility, advanced air mobility, and everything associated with that, vertiports, power. It's going to come. We have been purposely conservative in terms of looking at the market. We are now in the market. We've got an RFP out to start exploring, and we've done 2 years worth of research internally. We've used a consultant to help us in that research. And there some things we discovered. 800 odd players in the market, okay, who could potentially build aircrafts and airframes. If you go back 120 years when the first manufacturers for cars, you probably had thousands at the peak. And then today that's distilled down to 10, 12 very large, very successful organizations. And I sense that's what's going to happen with eVTOL. When it will come, I can give you dates where we think it will come and where manufacturers and others have said it will come. Some are aiming, 25, 26 for certification and various type certifications in the US and Europe. Shortly after, they will be here. Neom already have, and they're working with Volocopter. For me, this is the most interesting space. We talked about hydrogen, and we're doing, work with hydrogen aircraft. We're looking at hydrogen vessels, electric power, solar, and eVTOL falls into that. But it's this is the invention of the aircraft reinvented. How it will work in an urban environment, again, for us on a greenfield, we have helipads, we can modify, we have the power to do that. How it work in an urban environment, I would love to see. I really would. It took me 45 minutes to get here today. If there was a helipad on the roof and a eVTOL that I can take, I would absolutely do it. But then you've got the commercial aspects of it. These things are not going to be cheap. Okay, it's aircraft pricing, and I'm still quite, I say confused, maybe perplexed as to how some of these organizations can share a cost per kilometer per hour, which is cheaper than a car. So that's going to be the interesting thing to see. But it will come, and I think 26, 27, 28 we'll really start to see that.
Yes, and yeah, I think the commercial aspect is definitely going to be a critical one, and that's probably where the premiumness of getting to places faster is going to be baked in. And yes, you can come here not in 45 minutes, but in 15 minutes. You might have to pay 5 times the price, so that could be the way. Uh, Maybe in terms of the modes of transport, I know we've been discussing quite a bit, but in terms of, let's say, the pedestrian or micro-mobility related part, so um, I'm aware that Roshan is looking primarily into, let's say, the pedestrian related aspects and so on. Any comments or views from that particular side in terms of how you're promoting that part? I know it goes against, let's say, all the component manufacturing over here, but still would be a good thing to look into.
Okay, and in the pedestrian, always you look at walkability and the micromobility and the safety of the kids and the greenery space. So when you combine the three, you will get into a good combination that you should have the three elements of the walking pedestrian and the micromobility pedestrian, and also you have that capacity of having cars at the same time, while everyone knows the lane where to drive into, and also looking into making it available for the community with control of using AI to control the speeds of the micromobility. For instance, one of the technologies currently in the market, that if you're buying, or if you're renting a scooter, an electrical scooter, and you enter to a zone which is a kids play zone, the speed automatically reduced into 5, reduces automatically by the AI, and then once you go out of that zone, your speed goes up again. So that's part of looking into considering all the aspects of the ecosystem within the real estate development.
Got it. And maybe a quick question. I'm always intrigued by the pedestrian and micromobility related part, right? So we yes, those are solutions, but given the extreme temperatures which we have during the summer over here, how does, let's say, that part of, let's say, the weather fit in with some of these systems which are there? An open question to everyone.
Quite difficult.
Just something very quickly. I'm surprised and that in areas where we live and in the kingdom, I spent 11 years in Dubai previously. It's not considered, right? You know, if you don't want to walk in the heat, don't walk in the heat. Okay, and we become so used to it, I think, that you know we're enjoying the rain today. Okay, give it another month or two, it's 40 degrees, and you know we spend a lot of our time indoors. But there's nothing here or in places like Dubai or Abu Dhabi where you can go outside and enjoy the weather with, and this is where master planning maybe comes in, but you know, being outside without sweating and boiling to death in the heat or humidity. So that to me, I'm very surprised. There's no cycle tracks that are maybe covered or that are, you know, containerized.
I'm gonna just clarify one point, which is part of the Vision 2030 today is the Green Riyadh, and part of the Green Riyadh also part of the Vision 2030 the Carbon Initiative. So the Green Riyadh Initiative, why we started Green Riyadh from the beginning? The Green Riyadh started from the beginning to reduce the climate temperatures and these issues, and also to help into enhancing the weather across Riyadh, and it will help again to, if you increase the green coverage within the civil areas, you will be having a better weather temperatures, less dust, and you will be having also areas to go, similar to what Andre mentioned, areas to go and walk and using the. That's why you can see King Salman Park, and you can see the Sports Boulevard, all of them into supporting the Green Riyadh initiative, which will help in increasing the green coverage of the kingdom.
Yeah, I was about to say the Sports Boulevard. It's 135 kilometers in length of a cycling and jogging track across Riyadh, north to south, east to west, between Wadi Hanifa and Wadi Sulay. And I invite everyone to go to Wadi Hanifa in the morning. It's packed with cyclists and people on scooters, people jogging, people walking, and the temperature is different than the UAE. There's no humidity. So it's actually very pleasant weather between 6 to 8 months of the year. It's different. UAE, I know, is very challenging. I lived there for 16 years before coming here. In here, it's not. Easily, the standards here is a walking distance for even a daily trip, local mosques 5 times a day, is a 350 to 400 meters. But this is easily stretched to 800 in a nice weather, even 1 kilometer. You can reach the 7 to 10 minutes walking easily, 6 to 8 months of the year. I'm doing it, my kids are doing it, I know a lot of people that are doing it. It's different than UAE. Yeah.
Perfect. Maybe one last question for you, Mohammed. Yeah, that'll be the last question, I promise. Uh, in terms of, let's say, the policy and regulations which are present, right? Again, we're talking about quite different modes of transport. All of these, let's say, modes tend to have much faster innovations and so on, right? Even EV charging, for example, the capacities keep increasing. If you take the electric vehicle, the battery voltage increases time to time. So from a regulation and policy perspective, any let's say support which would be required, any let's say viewpoints coming in from let's say the private sector side on this.
So honestly, regulations and policies are very important to promote such thing and sustainable mobility, urban mobility, etc. So one of the challenges we're having here is the quite rapid changing of technologies, which is making it quite difficult to policymaker and regulator. And also, it's a question to the gentlemen: how would you allocate your investment, given the fact that you have so many new technologies, electric vehicles, hydrogen, etc., the e-volt, and etc. But this is one of the main challenges. I think the other challenge that we are seeing sometimes is that we have so many stakeholders involved in a couple of points, let's say, of discussions, which makes it quite difficult to come up with one focal point that we, the private sector, can contact and get on with it. So today, if I want to get into a project or if I want to get into a solution that I want to do, there's quite a number of stakeholders that I need to go and talk to, quite a number of regulators, policymakers, and permitters. So this is one of the biggest challenges, I think. And the other challenge I think we are having is the rapid change of technologies. I mean, if you look, you can have off-grid, on-grid, and you can have electric vehicles. The batteries are changing, the chargers themselves are increasing in power rating year after year. So the regulators are finding a difficult time, but I think we can have something done if we can be quite involved with everyone. It comes to the point that I was saying earlier. I very much promote the involvement of all stakeholders and the constant gatherings to discuss all the points, because I believe I can, from my perspective as a private sector and from everyone's else perspective, we have our own perspective. So when you look at the regulations, when we come to talk to regulators and policymakers, we always add that angle that they're not seeing, and everyone else is having the angle. So it's very important that we meet on a regular basis and involve everyone. But again, I think one of the questions that I'm very interested to ask the gentleman here, which is pretty much related to the regulations here, how will you, I mean, make a decision and allocate your investment given the rapid change of technologies, the fact that you have solar efficiencies increasing, the fact that you have electric vehicles, batteries, and the power ratings, and the hydrogens, and the cost efficiency, and everything else. I mean, it's very difficult to make a decision and allocate the fund that you are having in such technologies. The gentlemen are already going through such thing, and I think Andre might be the best one here to answer the question. It really interests me.
Maybe I can also take a stab at that one because
Yeah.
I do interact with quite a few of, let's say, the Giga developers when it comes to mobility solutions and so on. It is true that there are so many technologies which keep coming in that it's not that you can always say, okay, this is the one which I'm picking and doing it, right? So, and in many instances, again, Andreas, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I have seen more of, let's say, the initial start with more of pilots, let's say, larger scale commercial, or rather, mm, small scale commercial operations being done. So these are, let's say, a fleet of 10, 20 trucks kind of a thing which starts happening. With that, the respective technologies have to prove their cost efficiencies in the real world setup in the kingdom, right? So across the different use cases and all of it. Only after that particular part is proven do, let's say, the complete RFPs get launched, and or rather the decision on technology is launched. And even in that particular case, there is always a mix of technologies which are being looked at, so that it's not that all eggs are in one basket. So if I take the example of hydrogen versus battery electric, all of these things, so I have seen it, let's say, in real life where it's pilots, and then there is a strong mix of these technologies which are being looked at. And I think that mix would exist for the next 5 years or so until the next fleet cycle comes in, and then you might be able to take a better, let's say, decision.
That's exactly what we're doing. So battery electric BEV is our staple. It's available. It's tried. It's tested. Hydrogen. I think we're one of the first to have hydrogen supply here in the kingdom, and of course, proof of concept for cars, buses, trucks, and moving that onto aircraft.
Perfect. Thank you, gentlemen, for the discussion. I've already been given the warning that it's only 2 more minutes. Can we have one question from the audience if they are okay with it?
Hi everyone, so my name is Ali. Thank you so much, Arvind, and all the panelists. So my question is, there is a lot of discussion even within this conversation around sustainability. The first thing is I'm a little bit confused when we talk about sustainability, like what is top of the agenda? Is that commercial sustainability? Is that the sustainability of utility? And the second thing is there is a lot of discussion about sustainability, and we know that this model is not working in this capitalistic world. So CO2 emissions are going up. We recently had urban flooding in Dubai, and this model is not working. So my question to all the panelists, anyone can take it up. Is there any conversation going on in terms of when it comes to the urban mobility, in terms of regenerative sustainability, or what we are doing in terms of our thought leaders, that what repair or regenerative processes or conversations where we are having, that we pay back to the environment, and we have a more sustainable future, not in terms of commercial sense, but also the environmental sense as well. Thank you.
I'm going to answer very quickly. That's a great question. Sustainability is it's not just about the green piece, right? It's also commercial. If we, you know, I don't think throwing money at a problem ultimately resolves the problem. And when it comes to our environment, that's certainly not the case. We're doing things that we started in our construction phase, okay, that help protect our environment. When it comes to our mobility, we're fully on solar power, so we're not dragging from the grid. And we continue to do this in our other projects. And then there are thousands of initiatives in the background. We're not only, want to leave the environment in the same state we found it, we have pledged to have a positive impact on our 30% net by 2040, which when you think about that, it's terrifying, but achievable. And our chief sustainability environment officer and that team, their focus is on exactly that. Um, so I'm hoping over the years we get to show the world what can be done, but what can be done commercially, right? I think there is this misconception that PIF and the Saudi government will just have a bottomless pit that they will give to projects. Um, we're all startups. I think all of us here are startup companies, and there comes a point where every startup needs to stand on its own 2 feet and live up to the values that they're telling the world. Environmental sustainability and luxury tourism don't necessarily go hand in hand, right? But we've done it. Duri are doing it. Roshan are doing it. There's so many projects here that have created and developed a new approach on how we do these, because there is the vision and the ambition and the determination, all around Vision 2030. And then if you look at 2040, 2050, and potentially what's going to come, I think Saudi will become a beacon of sustainability, which is, being the center of the oil world is an amazing paradox, right? You go from pure oil dependency into being one of the most regenerative countries in the world, and that for me is something absolutely amazing.
Perfect. Thanks everyone. Thanks. Maybe that question is for later. After they leave the place, you can catch hold of them for sure. So thanks panelists for the great discussion, and thanks to everyone. Bye.
Should we quickly give them our token of appreciation? So before everybody leaves, let's just do a quick shot. Over to you. We need lots of hands. Last but not least. Yeah, let's do. Look, we have all these cameras in front of you, so. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.